With the stones, it was a really delicate balance on maintaining very, very light pressure and a very fine amount of mud to bring out some details. For this for natural stone finish like this, I'm looking for actually a very natural look rather than a very heavy contrast. And we can achieve that in different ways, but I want something actually that looked very natural on this blade because it's going to be used. So overall soft feeling to the way the blade looks. Numbers and kanjis. So in this video, we're going to be focusing on natural stones and the natural stone finishing that we're going to be doing for this blade. Within the natural stones, what we're going to talk about is Kasumi finish and the pressure and different ideas about finishing with the natural stone for this blade. But first, let's go over a little bit what is Kasumi? What is a Kasumi finish? What does that mean? Kasumi, or bokashi, which is sometimes referred to, depending on which people you're talking to in the industry, means haze or fog. It refers to, on a kitchen knife, the contrast between the soft iron and the steel. The soft iron being a kind of grayish, cloudy color, and the contrast is given from the bright or the polished area of the steel.
Do you have any Kasumi knife now?
Let me check. I might have some. Just a sec. What's this here? Oh, I do. This would be an example of Kasumi finish. So this is a single bevel knife. So on this blade, I did the hira, or the flat area, and also the blade road, or the kiriha, is done in a Kasumi finish. And then below that soft iron cladding, the bright area down there is white, or like a mirror finish, to create that contrast. The finish on this blade is fully done on stone. There's a few different types of Kasumi, or how to get that contrast. There's natural stones, also using finger stones or small pieces of the natural stones that are very thin. You can also use different types of natural stone powder mixes. And there's also sandblast or bead blast. To achieve the Kasumi finish on a natural stone, just by the stone itself, is probably the most difficult and time consuming. It takes quite a bit of skill and understanding on how to get a really nice contrast between the soft iron and the steel. It takes also very specific stones. A lot of stones don't give a nice contrast. If you're just going straight onto the stone, the steel will actually be cloudy. So you've got to really pick the stone to match sometimes the knife, sometimes even the hardness and the steel. Even in some cases, I've found even different blacksmiths and different stones, you really need to match them to get a really nice finish. But it is probably the most difficult and time-consuming way to get a nice Kasumi finish. But it is the most beautiful. The next way to achieve a Kasumi finish is by using finger stones, or what I mean by that is using fine pieces or very thin pieces of natural stones to achieve the effect that you would get from a natural stone. It's not actually very common in Japan to do this technique. I've actually only ever really seen it used in Sanjo by Shigefusa and Tsukasa Hinara. I've seen those two do it personally, but I've actually never seen anybody else do it. There might be some misunderstanding between what is done on a sword using a finger stone or what is called hazuya or jizuya. That is a completely different technique. You're not trying to achieve a Kasumi finish. It's for a completely different technique and progression of a polish. So using finger stones to achieve a Kasumi finish is not something I see in Japan. The next way to achieve a Kasumi finish is actually pretty quick and easy, but also produces a really nice finish, and that is to use a powder, and a natural stone powder or a mix between natural stone and synthetic powder. Just mixing the powder with water to get a kind of thick, almost paint or tooth-like toothpaste thickness or texture. And then you're just applying that mud onto the blade. In Sakai, I guess that would be called uahiki, or to pull above, or what that means is to take a pad or sometimes a rubber, something similar, and use your clay mixture and just run it across the blade road, not touching the steel and trying to really focus only on the soft iron. Doing a Kasumi finish by powder, I've personally, in all the workshops I've seen and the craftsmen I've worked with, I've never seen any standard way to do this technique. And every craftsman that's a sharpener or knife maker that does this technique has their own mix of natural stone powder or mix of natural and synthetic stone, and the technique of applying it to the blade is completely different across everybody. So it really depends on what you're looking for. There's no real standard way to achieve that. Simply how you do it, you just mix it, get the clay and apply it across with some pad or rubber. We actually sell a really nice mix for Kasumi finish at Tosho Knife Arts, and it's a really nice blend actually of synthetic and natural stone to create a really nice color and texture on the iron for a really nice Kasumi finish. And I guess the last way to achieve that look, Kasumi finish, I guess you could call it, but is to actually do sandblast or bead blast. And this is often done for maybe factory knives that have that finish where you're doing a lot of knives at the same time and you're looking for a very easy way to get this finish. And sometimes you can actually mix natural stone powder, uahiki style, and sandblast together, which creates a very, very thick Kasumi finish. And those are all the ways I know and I've seen personally and I use to get a Kasumi finish. Today in this video, what we're actually going to be doing is Kasumi finish on natural stones. And the reason why I'm doing it on natural stones for this particular blade is because the customer wanted to be able to refresh and maintain this blade on his natural stones. And so that's what we're going to do. This is my stone. This is a scratchy stone. This is a nice stone. Scratchy. try this one. And these two. And I want to try the big one, but I like using it sometimes for Kasumi, the big Aoto. It's around the same grit range, around 2,000, 3,000. Let's try it on one side. Oh, we don't need that. Well, I'm going to start on Aoto. That's where I'm going to start. Just because I like this stone. One thing about my Kasumi Finish is that if your previous stone was giving you a really mirror polish or light Kasumi Finish, similar that we got before with the NSK 3000, then I like to start with a stone that's going to give me a thick base to start with as we move forward. That'll give me the kind of depth of Kasumi that I'm looking for in my final finish. Then after this one, we'll go through some other stones that I'm going to try. We're going to try all these down here, about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, about 9, 10 stones. After the Aoto, then I'll move to these other natural stones. So let me introduce the ones I'm going to use after the Aoto. After the Aoto, I picked out a bunch of different stones that I'm going to use after in a kind of progression from medium fine to 1 or 2 harder stones. And we'll go through these stones just to see which ones actually work best for this blade and the finish I'm looking for. There's a couple stones here that I will definitely use. One is this Uchigumori Ohira. That I'll definitely use just because I like the way it often feels. The other one I'll most definitely use is this Ohira here. It's really nice, cuts fast, very black, inky stone. It'll be nice transition from where we were before, so I'll definitely use this one as well. And probably I will most likely use this one just for the hard steel, for the steel. I use it a lot. It really brightens up and cleans up anything from the lower grits that we were on before. I tend to use this all the time, so I'll keep on going with this one. Aoto is it's a really interesting stone. Recently, I don't find too many people really using them, or maybe I just don't talk to enough people. But anyways, I've been using Aoto for a very long time. Actually, probably one of the very first natural stones I bought actually was an Aoto, just because it was a really easy stone to get a nice finish quickly, and it was actually great mid-range stone that not only gave a nice finish but also gave a really fairly nice edge for using in the kitchen. So I used it a lot at the time and then got really familiar with Aoto in general and how they performed. So I really started to use them a lot in polishing, in the progression, and kind of pushing them to see what I could get out of them and the different type of variety of Aoto. I lean towards more finer, pure Aoto, There's some that are very scratchy in nature, and that's not really nice. Some have a lot of impurities in them. Some are finer, some are rougher, a little bit rougher. So you really need to test them before you purchase it. But this particular Aoto is from, I've had this since about 2015. And I kind of fell in love with it just because I had already had such a long experience with Aoto in general.
It's huge.
Yeah, it's huge. I'm not really sure how much it weighs, but it's heavy. So we're going to start with this stone today. And we're going to only start on one side just to see how it compares to the last stone, to the 3000 grit stone. And from there, we'll move on to the other stones. I think it's a bit, the grain size below the NSK 3000 grit. Obviously, Aoto's not really in that grit range. Sometimes it can be finer. Sometimes it can be much lower. So we're seeing a little bit of scratchiness on this side. And I started on this side because I had a slightly different finish on either side, because I really wanted to try this stone out. So we'll go a little bit more and then see how it looks. Heavy stone.
Are you gonna change Aoto?
Yeah, we're gonna move to a different stone. That was definitely a lot rougher than the NSK. The NSK grain size, I guess you would say, is really fine. My experience with other 3000 grit stones, the NSK is very consistent and even. This produced a nice finish, but it's just a little bit too rough for where we are right now on this blade. So the first stone we're gonna start to use today is gonna be this Ohira Uchigumori. I'll just go over a few things about flattening and setting up the surface of the stone before we start sharpening. To get the stone flat and shaped the way I like it, and what I mean by shaped is that I like the stone to be the edges to be rounded, and also the corners to be also very rounded, going actually this way. So this to have a rounded surface all the way around the stone. Before we do that, I like to kind of set the shape of the stone up with an atoma plate. I usually use one of these atoma plate with a handle. I find it really easy to use. One important thing I do is I reserve the atoma plate that I'm using for natural stones, always used only for natural stones. After the atoma plate and after the rough kind of surface is set up and now it's flat from the atoma plate, then I often like to use this heavy nanohone flattening plate. It leaves a finer surface than the 140 grit that I'm using to set the shape of the stone. And then after the 140 grit atoma, I use this, and that kind of flattens and evens out everything. After that, then I will often go to this small 1500 grit atoma. And I use that just because this can't go on the corners, it'll destroy the stone. But it is excellent for the surface. So I use this just to smooth out all the corners all the way around. And then after that, I finish the stone off with some type of natural stone Nagura. In this case, matching Uchigumori to this stone here. And once the stone is all set up like that, it's all ready to go. I tend to use these Hazuya pieces to bring up mud onto the stone before I start sharpening. I could use other Nagura or other smaller pieces that I have, but I don't know why. I find they just work a lot better and they're easier to control than using large Nagura. Okay, and at this stage, this is ready. This is how I like the stone to be before I start. Looks better, but let's try another stone. Looks good, feels really good. It's bringing out some really nice detail just along the cladding line. But let's try another stone. So we have another large Ohira Suita. I've tested this one a few times, well actually a lot on different things, mainly honyaki, so it's going to kind of be the first time I'm going to use it on a sanmai blade like the Mazaki. So this is definitely a lot finer than the previous Ohira that we tested. So it may be good to actually brighten up the steel rather than giving me the really thick Kasumi that I like. Let's see how it looks. Yeah. Yeah, I think it'll be good for the steel rather than the cladding. But let's go to another stone, see. I'm going to test out some of these new stones that I picked out recently. Let's go with this one. It was really nice when I first tested it at Imanishi. It's got a beautiful skin. So let's try this one out. beautiful pattern, right? You can see some renge in there. Okay, let's flatten this one first. This is a really nice stone. But I think I'm going to reserve it more for single bevel knives and also some of the tools that I use. Kana, or mainly Kana, and probably just Yanagiba. But wow, what a find. Took about 5 hours to find it. Going through stone after stone after stone, but great find, so rare. Just a few different stones, and I think I decided on the couple that I'm going to use. For this blade particular, I'm going to use I think the first Ohira Uchigumori that we tested was really soft, and the blade really flowed really smoothly across the stone. Sometimes, depending on the characteristics of the stone, it can be smooth, it can be slightly wants to pull at you. And for the cladding, I like a stone that really is really smooth. So for the soft iron, it's going to go with that softer Ohira from the first one that we tested. And after that, I'm going to probably go with a different Ohira, maybe the second one. And that's going to be really to refine and just work on the area of the steel. So basically going from around here, the cutting edge, to just above the cladding line. So I'll really focus on there. And because this has a hamaguri, it's easy to do that. A couple of things just about moving on now. Really now what we have to really focus on a lot is controlling the water, how much water is on the stone at any given time, how much mud we want on the stone, or the slurry coming up from the stone, or do we want to introduce slurry from a nagura? And also for the iron or the steel, we want to make sure the stone is very clear and clean with only just water. So we've got to find this balance between all of these different scenarios on the stone in order to get a really nice contrast. Because this blade's going to be used by somebody and maintained on a natural stone, I don't want it to be too much of an art piece. Meaning I don't want somebody to look at it, think it's too beautiful, I can't use that. So I also want to sharpen it so that it's usable, because that's the point. So these are the two stones I'm choosing. This is going to be mainly for the cladding, the soft iron, and this is going to be for the steel. And working around just above the cladding line. Very, very nice stones. So we're gonna go on to the first Ohira, and then we're gonna start sharpening. Finally finished up the natural stone sharpening on the Mazaki knife. With the stones, it was a really, really delicate balance on maintaining very, very light pressure and a very fine amount of mud to bring out some details. When you're working with a harder stone to kind of brighten up the steel, you always run the risk of erasing a lot of the kasumi that you made with your softer stone. So this is a really fine balance, and sometimes you go too far, you got to go back. So you got to play this game back and forth, and eventually you get there. There's some interesting details underneath the cladding, which I wanted to bring out just actually for my own enjoyment, that kind of extend far down actually to where the cutting edge is. So that was really fun to kind of look at it and try to determine what to bring out. So we're all finished up, and now we'll kind of go over some of the things I'm just looking for and what I was looking for and why I finished this blade the way it is. So when I'm looking at the blade and kind of determining, okay, this is the end, there's a few things I'm definitely looking for. Basic stuff. This finish is very even. For this for natural stone finish like this, I'm looking for actually a very natural look rather than a very heavy contrast. And we can achieve that in different ways, but I wanted something actually that looked very natural on this blade because it's going to be used. So I wasn't really looking for something that was really overall soft feeling to the way the blade looks. Some of the things I'm looking for, of course, are that the blade shape is the way I want it. Of course, the scratches are removed from our previous stone, which was a 3000 grit stone. The shape is nice, and I've met all those criteria. It looks really nice to me. And I was able to keep the shape of the blade and the thinness the way I wanted it, more for performance rather than, I guess, aesthetics. So overall, it worked out really well. It was a lot of fun to work on this blade. It took a bit of time to kind of understand certain aspects of it, but overall it was good. I wanted it to look like this, really like a very light kasumi. I wanted a more hazy, soft finish for this blade. I thought it would look really nice with how the Kurouchi looks. Like sometimes when you're doing Kasumi finish, sometimes you can create a very strong definition from the steel to the iron to the soft cladding, and that sometimes can look really cool, but it really depends on, I feel, how the knife is going to be actually used. If it's going to be a piece that someone just wants to look at all the time, or if they're going to actually really use the knife. So because it's going to be used, I wanted a very different approach to the knife than like super strong, almost a sandblasted look to it. So I want something very, very calm, very soft. So looks nice. This is the end of this series with this Mazaki blade, going through all the stages of sharpening and kind of looking at what I'm looking for before I move on to the next stone. That was actually the whole point of this. So if you missed any of those series or any episodes, go back and you can take a look at them on how we got to this stage right here. If you have any questions or comments about this series or other things we've done, please leave them in the comment section. We always read all the comments and try to get to all of them. And you can also, I wouldn't say behind the scenes, but kind of what we're doing on a daily basis. Take a look at our Instagram account and subscribe, and you can kind of see updates and different things we're doing there. Again, thank you so much for watching and everyone's support. We really appreciate it, and we're going to keep on going and making some really unique stuff in the future. Thanks a lot. And we'll see you in the next video.